everybody got a chance to see. I had the pleasure of hearing him speak last night at the Friends of Denmark lecture series, and I look forward to hearing more about these great individuals that you researched. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The difference from yesterday is that I had my voice yesterday.
Oh.
It left me during the night. I will do my best. Can you hear me, David?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, that's mine, I think. You have it to switch it over.
Saw the picture.
There we go. Last time I visited the society, you were down the hill somewhere. So it's a while ago, Susan says. Yes, yeah, okay. Yes.
2005?
Okay. You've been here for a long time. And for a long time, I have been interested in the fact that people from the islands would travel to Denmark. That I have seen way back in the 1700s, individuals from the islands come to Denmark. And I mentioned one last night, a certain Johan Brutus, who turned up in Copenhagen as a sailor. He was a free man, and he lived the rest of his life in Copenhagen, married a lady over there. So we know that was actually a possibility, even back in the 1700s, that you could sell it. And he, in one letter, presents himself as, I am a Negro, so we know that he is more or less of African background. And that was possible to sell. Few people turn up here and there, and you know, after some years I had to decide where am I gonna concentrate in this whole number of people that I had gathered. So I put a date, a year, 1880, up to 1920, and that's what my book is about. In that era, we've got something wonderful, photography. Photography as a source to identify these people and to tell us something. And I have done something that academic historians usually don't like to do. I really try to use the photographs as sources. I try to read the photographs, and I'll share with you some of my thoughts concerning these old photographs that are in the book. And I also put that here because from 1880 we are after Firebird. We are after, see, when I present Danish West Indian history overall, I usually say you can put it into, you can give some headlines. And one headline that I have is the slow revolution taking place from 1815 and up to 1880. Yes, we talk about emancipation as a big thing, but it was a long process. A lot of important things happened before, and things didn't change in 48 for everybody. A lot of people stayed on the estates, and we all know that finally came Fireburn and kicked the whole process so that freedom became something new. And I usually say to my students and to others, from 1880 on, the Danish West Indies form a part of the Western world. We have industrialization, steam engines in the plantation, steam engines out in Herschel Island to get the ships up. Everything changes. We've got immigration. The workers move and they leave for the States, just like back home in Denmark. They did the same at the same time. at the same period, 300,000 Danes left for the United States, and thousands of Virgin Islanders left. It's the same processes we see. People fight for rights, and they fight for better health situations and schools and all that. And little by little, there's no difference between Denmark and the islands. Interesting. So that's the period I'm working with, and I'm going to present for you a few of these stories that are in the book. Let's see if I can have it work. It's all this important.
Here, can I interrupt for a second? There's 3 seats up front. If there's some in the back who can't hear and want to move forward.
There are 3 seats up front for those in the back who can't hear.
No, they're hard.
Okay, so this is how the book looks like, and the story behind the front page, and by the name of the book, Mrs. Jensen and Other Danish West Indians, is that I discovered 17, 18 years ago, when I was looking for some pictures in the National Museum in Copenhagen, where I worked at that time, I discovered this photograph, and I found it very interesting. It just appealed to me. I had to find out something more about this person. The lady standing there, there's something about her. She certainly isn't smiling or dancing or anything. She's a serious person. But she certainly presents herself in a very proper way. And in the museum, this photograph was put on a little museum card, and it had been photographed from a private album. And it said that this was Henrietta Jacobs from St. Croix, who had escorted the family around 1896 from St. Croix to Copenhagen to take care of the daughter of the family. So much for that story. But the photograph was dated 1913, 17 years later, and the picture was taken in Copenhagen. So, what's in between? Wouldn't we all want to know? We'll return to that story. Something is funny here. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong.
You got it right now?
I'm not good at this stuff. For many years, I taught at university just once a week at the University of Copenhagen. And every morning I said good morning to John, who passed my door. And suddenly there was a meeting concerning the Danish West Indies. And there was John. And I said, what are you doing here? I was going to be one of the speakers at the meeting. And so, John, what are you doing? Well, my grandfather was a Negro. And that's a word that the Danes will just use, because people are white and the language isn't affected of political correctness and things like that. So he said, oh, my grandfather, he was black. And I said, well, John, you could pass as an Italian or something, but I wouldn't guess that your grandfather was black. And he said, he came from the West Indies. Wow. And there his grandfather, Joseph Brown, in the Royal Navy in Copenhagen. And that's another wonderful story. It's in the book. It's one of the main stories. Mrs. Jensen and Joseph Brown are the main stories. I'm not going to share with you a whole lot about Joseph Brown. It's a fantastic story, but we'll leave it for some other time. It will be Mrs. Jensen that will be the main character. Photographs in family albums and here and there around in museums, etc. turn up. And one colleague one day came with this one at the museum. And she said, you know, Per, you think this is some of your people? Meaning somebody from the Danish West Indies? And I said, well, it doesn't ring a bell right there. And then we started it was in an album from a family where this did not fit. So it seemed like they were friends of the family, and there were no names whatsoever in that album. So we worked on it, and what time are we at? Where the clothing, the haircuts, and things like that. Where are we? 1860s maybe. They are not young people. Maybe they're a little behind. Maybe we're in the 1870s, and they're just sticking with the good old style from the 60s. And I looked at my name lists, and I could only come up with one couple that fit. Mr. and Mrs. McCormick. John McCormick was by his parents in St. Croix sent to boarding school in Denmark in 1816, a long time ago, 200 years ago. And I knew that he stayed the rest of his life in Copenhagen. And if you take the not the phone book in those days, but the street list, or what do you call it, address book from Copenhagen back in the 1860s and 70s, you will find plantation owner Mr. John McCormick. And you think, plantation owner in Copenhagen? It's long distance.
Yes.
And anyway, I'm pretty sure this is John McCormick. His mother was a so-called three-colored person. The father was, as the name indicates, Scottish. And it could be, and we're not talking about a sailor or a house servant. We're talking about a man of a certain class. And the lady seems to be of all European background. And it so happened that we know that John McCormick married a cousin from England. So most likely that's who it is. But naturally I cannot say for sure. But it's fun to work with pictures like that and see what comes up in the archives. But pictures is more than just photographs. How about this lady? With these two very pale girls. And among the good painters in the second half, in the middle and the second half of the 1800s back in Denmark, Wilhelm Marstrand is very outstanding. A very, very good Danish painter. And it just so happened that his older brother was a master carpenter and lumber trader in St. Thomas. And as far as I know, one of the two who designed the government house that we see today. Yes. If you go to the Danish cemetery, you'll find the Marstrand gravesite. So these are the painter's nieces visiting Copenhagen and having their nanny along. All we know is that this is Justina. But maybe, dear friends, we can find something about Justina in the sources here. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could give her last name and give her a history? So maybe someday, 1858. So we are moving step by step up to the period I'm focusing on. Well, what a gentleman. He's just working. He's on his job. He's doing his job. This man, Albert Donovan, turns up in the files in the 1880s, but I suspect that he was there even 10 years before, in the mid-1870s. And we have a couple of good sources to this person. The first one is, where do I have this photograph from? The granddaughter, Mrs. Hendrickson in Copenhagen, whom I visited. And she said, well, I have a few pictures that I can show you of my grandfather. And she came up with this one. Well, he's on his job. She said, he traveled around and made a show that he was an African. He was a warrior, a Zulu warrior. This was after the big Zulu war in the 1870s, and where the Zulu warriors were famous for their strengths and brave. What is it? Bravery. And so it was seen several places that a person of African background would make his own Zulu show. And this is what it is. Another source to this story is a waiter in Copenhagen at a fancy Copenhagen restaurant who has written his memoirs from late 1800s. And he tells about all kinds of people that come to his restaurant, and he says, now and then Mr. Donovan turned up. He was a black man who worked at different restaurants that we hear the names of where he has been working. And for a while he traveled around the country as an African. And listen, Mr. Paulson came, another customer at the restaurant. He would come in one day and he said, I was down in the southern part of the island, and there was this market going on with people doing funny things, and I discovered that our friend Donovan was there. And I went into the tent, and I said, hey, hello Albert. And he said, don't tell him that I speak Danish. He just went around saying, ooga booga, just like if it was kids playing. And he had made a living of that. It's quite fantastic that it worked. You can do that. But it's people, how are we to look upon this today? I can say that the way that I look upon this today is, this man was a great actor. He was an actor, and he didn't mind to exhibit himself to make money. Because why did he have to make money? Because he has his wife and family back in Copenhagen. Here is the wedding picture with Donovan and his wife, who is a Miss Jensen. And the witnesses at the wedding were a man from one of the restaurants that Donovan had worked, and one of Miss Jensen's brothers. For the 3 baptisms that follow, the people that, the godfathers at the baptisms, are the Jensen family members. So you can see there's certainly no turning your back to this West Indian person. He is a member of the Jensen gang here. So it's a quite interesting story, and what Mrs. Henriksen said, I think it was more difficult for my mom, because by then we had entered the 1900s and living in Europe in the 1920s and 30s. That was a different story, when the Nazis in Germany grew up and things like that. But back in this era, it was apparently not a problem for this man. So, Mrs. Jensen herself, as I said before, the story starts in St. Croix. We're so fortunate that Mrs. Jensen was interviewed a couple of times during her lifetime. When she turned 70, a big Copenhagen newspaper interviewed her. And she says, yes, I had met a Danish soldier in Christenstedt, and we had decided to get married. What she didn't say was that he was on a 6-year contract, and there was more than 2 years left before they were to go to Copenhagen. And she didn't have money for that, and he didn't have money for that. But then she got a chance to get a job as a nanny, so she could work her way to Copenhagen. And off she went, 2 years before he did. So she actually immigrated to Denmark. She decided to move to Denmark on her own. She got the job, and this is the family that she worked for. She didn't work for this family in Christenstedt. She was a nanny with a different family who were friends with the family. But then this family needed to go to Denmark. Is there sort of something to point, Robert, on this one?
No.
Okay. This is Mr. Broom, and this is his wife, and they had just this one daughter. So that's the family. And they needed to go, Mrs. Broom and the daughter were going to Copenhagen and wanted a nanny to come along, and I think that's because she had had a miscarriage, is that the word? Yeah. So she was not at good health at that time. So they would like to have a nanny along. And anyway, they must have trusted the person they hired. In this photograph, we are in this fantastic situation that the owner tells us who they are, all are. Mrs. Thomas and her husband, Mr. Thomas, they were working in the household. The cook and the housemaid and the helpers. This is Mr. and Mrs. Thomas's sons, and the 2 girls helping. And these 2 ladies are not part of are not servants. They are just living in the same house. They are dressmakers. Seamstresses, yes. And anyway, this sets sort of the background. So she goes to Copenhagen, works for the lady for a short time, and then moves into the city and starts her own life, waiting for Jensen to come. And it takes those 2 years. And you know, people who are gonna make a respectable marriage don't just jump into things right away in those days. So after he arrived, another year passed before they finally get married. But just think of it, you know, they are able to wait this long, and they get married. And before they get married, she has moved in with her parents-in-law to be. So again, she must have been accepted by that family.
So did you learn to speak German? I mean,
Danish, yes. Now, why do I know a lot about this family? One reason is that the National Museum had photographed all these photographs, and that helped a little bit to put pieces together. But we still have that time span between 1896 and 1913. In between comes a fantastic event that helps a whole lot, and that is an exhibit in Copenhagen in 1905. It's after Denmark for the second time had tried to sell the Danish West Indies to the United States, and the sale had failed. Some people, particularly from the Conservative Party, wanted to revive the connections with the Danish West Indies, but also with Greenland and Iceland and the Faroe Islands, which were part of the Danish state. And one lady, who happens to sit right here, a Danish author and women's rights fighter, wanted to set up a big exhibit for people from Iceland, from the Faroe Islands, from Greenland, and from the Danish West Indies, where people come and bring in goods what they produce in these areas, and representatives come in and tell about their culture, show items from the way they fish, the way they do different things. How do the Inuit people in Greenland live? How do the people in the West Indies live? How do the people in Iceland live, etc. So, for the opening of the West Indies, the exhibit, it turns out that the family from St. John, who were to represent the Danish West Indies, did not turn up. 2 children had in the last minute been chosen to send to Denmark and came 2 months after the exhibit had opened. So they just participated at the end of the exhibit. A man came because he was bringing in some donkeys from St. Thomas. So William Smith from St. Thomas, he agreed that he could just export his donkeys over here. That was okay. He had time for that. So he became a representative for the island together with these 2 children that arrived later. And then a lady in Copenhagen who happened to be Mrs. Jensen. So Mrs. Jensen worked in the restaurant, so she was hired for this. She was not a representative, she was working at the restaurant together with other people. And this just happens to be from the opening day where the committee sits for afternoon tea. And you see this picture in several books. And back in the 70s and 80s, when this picture has been used, people have all kinds of ideas that here you can see how the black person from the West Indies is used so what can you say, disgracefully as a servant. But look closely to that picture. What is going on in the picture? There are 2 ladies serving. This lady is about to put a teacup to Mrs. Gatt. And Mrs. Jensen is about to bring in the teapot to serve for Miss Gustafsson. So we have Mrs. Jensen now in a West Indian full, what do you say, costume, and Miss Lykke in an old Danish costume from the countryside outside of Copenhagen to represent the Danish culture. So it's certainly not a way of putting down Mrs. Jensen. It's just a way of presenting her as a representative from the island. So she worked there, and she was the only West Indian who was present on the day of opening the exhibit. Mr. Williams arrived the next week. So all the journalists who came for the opening ended up down at the restaurant and met Mrs. Jensen, who had been in Copenhagen for 10 years and spoke English. Wow, so they could just sit down and talk and chat with Mrs. Jensen. So she disappears in the newspaper the next day. And that's why I know quite a bit about Mrs. Jensen. She keeps coming back in the media, and that helps a lot. And that's what we get for the first time, the story of when Mrs. Jensen met the king and the crown prince and the crown princess and the Queen of England and the Empress of Russia, all members of the Danish royal family. And the story in the newspaper the next day is that the old king had been conversing with Mrs. Jensen. And when he heard that she was married, he offered to be the godfather for the firstborn. Now what is this? Why in the world does he say that? Well, it is a way to put special emphasis on the fact that there are overseas districts of the kingdom, people that we should really hold on to after these people in parliament wanted to sell the Danish West Indies just a few years before, which the king was very much against. My voice is about to leave. Could I have something to drink?
The water's behind you.
Okay.
I can get you something else if you want.
I don't know.
Need some warm.